Welcome everyone to the Northern Ireland Science Festival. Mark the Science Guy here, and thank you all for joining me for what's going to be an awesome adventure with astronaut Tim Peake. So Tim, thanks for joining us.
Hello Mark, delighted to join you today.
We're so delighted to have you, and I know there are thousands of really excited kids and families and people of all ages who can't wait to hear about your adventures, your stories, of which there are many. And we have got some awesome questions sent in to us from students from Northern Ireland, the UK, and across the world as well. And we'll get to those later as well. Some really funny questions I hope you're ready for, Tim. But again, thank you so much for joining me. And first off, how's life with you?
It's good, thanks very much. I mean, it's been a tough year for everybody, and everyone's in lockdown, and it's a bit similar to life on the International Space Station, really, with that level of isolation that we're all feeling. I've got two young boys as well, so we're in the depths of homeschooling, all hoping that we can return to some sort of normality soon.
That's what actually I was thinking, Tim, that you were probably well positioned to cope with these challenging kind of lockdown times, seemingly quite similar to living in that confined environment on the ISS. Did those kind of lessons from the ISS help you with the homeschooling and the new lockdown?
They do actually. I mean, the thing is that as astronauts, you spend so much time training and preparing for going into this really unusual environment. You know, you're going to spend 6 months, maybe a year, as we had Scott Kelly and Misha Kornienko with us who are up there for a year, isolated, working together, stressful conditions, at high levels of concentration. So we put a lot of effort into teaching people how to deal with those circumstances. And of course, nobody had any preparation or training for lockdown when COVID arrived. So as astronauts, we're very fortunate. We've spent days living down in a cave. We've spent 12 days living underwater on NEMO missions. And we go through all of this training to help us deal with isolation. And it really did help actually in lockdown. Putting those kind of structure and routine in place really does help with life down here as well.
Okay, and probably preparing lots of young kids who are experiencing this lockdown now, preparing them, unknown to themselves, they're preparing for space. Maybe they're learning some lessons and building the mindset that they need to be the first person to walk on Mars. So any of the young kids at home, well done. Keep going and keep being strong. You're building the mindset that's needed to get to space like yourself, Tim. Now, Tim, we're going to talk about your journey, getting to space, what it's like living in space and returning from space, and so many lovely questions that we're going to get to as well. But I'd like to start on your early years where you came across as an extremely adventurous person.
Yeah, well, I think I was kind of searching for what it was that I wanted to do in life, as many young people do. And I was trying a bit of everything. I had an elder sister, so she would often get into things first. Maybe it was, long distance swimming or horse riding or cross country running. And I'd try all of that and follow. And it wasn't until I joined the cadet force at school, I was 13 years old. And that was when the penny dropped. And I really just thought, this is everything that I want to do. It was all about, teamwork and interesting people, but it was outdoor activities, adventure training, it was kayaking, it was hiking, orienteering. We were going on week-long exercises and also flying aircraft. And I just thought, if I can do this for the rest of my life, I'd be very happy.
And it wasn't exactly an astronaut that you had your mind set on from the beginning, was it?
Not at all. I mean, we didn't have British astronauts when I was 13, and I was watching the space shuttle launch. I was watching the Mir space station be built, but it was things that the Americans and the Russians seemed to be doing, and it didn't seem a career path that was open to British school children. Which thankfully today it is. And we're about to have a new selection process very soon for the European Space Agency. And again, delighted that British citizens can apply for that. So it's fantastic. But no, for me, it was flying that was my passion. And that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. That was the career I wanted to follow.
And that led you to an 18-year career in the army, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I had a wonderful time in the Army. I don't know why it was Army and not Royal Air Force or Royal Navy, but, you know, for me, I just think helicopters held a certain sort of passion for me. And I really enjoyed the role that the Army pilots had. And so I decided to go down that route and never looked back, and absolutely no regrets of having a wonderful, exciting, you know, 18-year career in the Army Air Corps.
And you were a helicopter test pilot. And reading your book, Tim, some of the things you have to do as a test pilot, really pushing yourself to the limits, but also those machines and seeing what they're capable of. There was one moment where I think you flew a helicopter up so it would freeze and then just dropped from the sky to see what would happen.
Well, yeah, we certainly let it freeze. We weren't wanting it to drop from the sky, but you do. You're absolutely right. As test pilots, you get involved in some really interesting, exciting things, and it is risky. But being a test pilot is actually all about mitigating that risk. It's working out how can you go and do something that is really pushing the boundaries, but do it in the safest way possible. And we work out, you know, we try and work out what are all the dangerous things that might happen and how can we do something about it. And then when we change something, we just change one thing at a time. So you might try and get an aircraft higher and higher and higher, or you might be trying to see what its angle of bank can be, or the G that you can pull, but you do it very incrementally. So you do end up taking risks, but you do it in a very controlled manner.
Awesome. And I'm sure you get a very common question of how do you become an astronaut? And as you said in your book, first you have to answer the ad. And unbeknownst to yourself, it seemed like you had been preparing to be an astronaut all your life from all your different training.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing, because although, you know, in those early days, I wasn't dreaming about being an astronaut, and I wasn't thinking that was where my journey was going to lead. Actually, by the time I came to fill out the application form, I kind of realized that I was leading the exact life that was required at the time. You know, I had a degree in flight dynamics by then. I'd been a test pilot, I had operational experience. I'd worked in other countries with other militaries, and I had lots of experience and exposure to this different cultural environments, which is really important. So I realized I was really at the right time, the right place, and had this qualifications that the European Space Agency were after. So it was very fortunate timing for me.
And we have a lovely question here from Fairhill Primary School, who say, what sort of qualities are needed to make someone into a good astronaut?
Well, I think the main thing, you need two sort of aspects, two pillars, if you like. And one of those pillars you can't really do much about, and that's all about your personality and your character, and you know, and also to a degree these hard skills, as we call them, like concentration and memory retention and spatial awareness. These are skills that certain people just tend to do better at, even though they might not have had any specific training. And then the second pillar is the soft skills, and that's about your teamwork, your leadership, your communication, how you get on with people. And these are skills that you really can develop throughout your life. You know, whether you're involved at an early age in Cubs or Scouts or Cadets or Duke of Edinburgh, getting out and about, meeting other people, getting involved in team activities. These are really important skills for astronauts to have. So you've got to have that blend of what we would call hard skills and soft skills.
So much goes into becoming an astronaut and training to become an astronaut. Can you talk to us a little bit about the training that you undertook in preparation?
Yes, there's years and years of training. So the first thing that happens, once you've been selected as an astronaut, you meet your colleagues, and we come from diverse backgrounds. You know, we had a couple of pilots, but we had a physicist, we had an engineer, we had a scientist. And we've all got different levels of knowledge about things. So you kind of go back to school initially, go back to the classroom, and everybody has to come up to a certain level of knowledge on all these subjects, like physics, like engineering, like orbital mechanics, to understand the training that's going to come along. Then you start getting into the astronaut-specific training. So what's weightlessness going to feel like? Going up in parabolic flights, learning how to do a spacewalk. We all have to learn Russian. So we go and spend quite a lot of time in Russia. We also have to know everything about the International Space Station. So we train around the world in Japan, Canada, the USA, Europe, Russia as well on that. You have to learn how to operate a robotic arm, how to capture visiting spacecraft, how to fly a spacecraft. The list goes on. And if that weren't enough, you know, on board the space station, there's no doctor or dentist, there's no computer expert, no plumber to fix the loo when it breaks. So you have to know all of those skills too. So by the time I flew to space, I'd been training for 6 solid years in all these activities.
Wow. And what was probably personally the hardest part of the training for you?
I think that there are 2 aspects. I mean, the actual one subject that was the hardest was learning Russian language for me. I had a GCSE in French when I applied to join the space agency, and I hadn't used my French for many years. And so learning another language in my 30s was quite tough. And Russian is not the easiest language, I don't think, for native English speaking people to learn. It's grammatically, it's quite complicated. And of course, it has a Cyrillic alphabet. So we don't even recognize the letters of the alphabet. So that was tough. And I think the other tough thing is just the vast quantity of information that you need to learn in a short space of time. So you've got to be somebody who's very organized, very disciplined, and you've got to really be able to know what's essential to learn and what's the nice to have. You know, what are the things that you really, really need to hold on to? And what are the things that actually I can learn that on the space station, I'll have a document that can help me with.
Oh, very cool. And you did a lot of really cool things during your training. And I want to know about the vomit comet, Tim, the infamous vomit comet. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, the vomit comet, it's an unfortunate nickname because, you know, yes, some people do feel unwell, but most people actually have a really, really good time on the vomit comet. But this is how we experience weightlessness on Earth, because it's really hard. I mean, how do you experience weightlessness on Earth? Well, you could drop in an elevator, but that's going to have a nasty ending. Or you could jump off a cliff into water, but you're only going to experience, you know, a second at most of weightlessness. So to experience weightlessness for a long period of time, we go up in an aircraft and it pulls up to about 45 degrees nose up, pushes over the top to 45 degrees nose down. And during that maneuver, we get 30 seconds of true weightlessness, and we're floating around in the back of the aircraft. And this aircraft just does that up and down, up and down, up and down, 33 times in a row. We go up for about 3.5 hours, and each time we're getting weightlessness exposure. So it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Now, Tim, I love roller coasters and things like that, but I get very dizzy very easily. Is it something you can train for if you find that I'm not feeling so good up here? Is that something you can train for? Or do you realize, uh-oh, maybe I need to pick a different career?
No, you can train for it, but also space sickness is a really strange sickness. We've had experienced fast jet test pilots who've been terribly sick in space. And we've had scientists who've never flown and they've been absolutely fine. Wow. So even if you are, you know, you've got a high tolerance to pulling G's in aircraft and fairground rides, it's no guarantee that you're actually going to be fine in space. Wow. Everybody reacts differently. I was very, very lucky going into space. I had absolutely no problems at all and didn't feel sick. I actually felt sick coming back down to Earth. My first 2 days on Earth, I felt dreadful. Whereas some people have it the other way. Some people feel dreadful going into space, but are fine when they come back to Earth. Everybody's different. Okay. But it's fair to say that you know, if you've got a strong stomach, then you're probably going to have an easier time. You know, things like the vomit comet, things like spacewalk training, where you are turning upside down in swimming pools and you know, disorientating. So if you do get sick and dizzy easily, then you're probably going to have a tougher time during training.
So speaking of having a strong stomach, Tim, you're strapped in. It's 2015. You're strapped in. You're ready to launch. Talk to us about that experience.
Yes, I mean, the launch is just overwhelming. It's so exciting. And yes, I mean, there's a bit of anxiety and apprehension. You're sitting on 300 tons of explosive rocket fuel, and you want everything to go well.
Yes.
But it's mostly just adrenaline and excitement. At that point, you've done everything you possibly can. All your checks are complete. You're just sitting there listening to some music and waiting for the clock to count down. And when the engines light up, the noise and the power that you feel from this rocket is overwhelming, and it accelerates faster than a Formula One car. Wow. Off it goes. And it does that for 8 minutes 48 seconds, and that's a long time. I mean, that's longer than we've been talking already, I think. So you imagine the entire time we've been talking, we've been accelerating faster than a Formula One car, and you're still going.
Oh, wow.
It's unbelievable.
And I read in your book, Tim, that you get, interestingly, 3 choices of songs to play in the capsule while you're getting ready before launch. You get to choose 3 songs that can be played around. What 3 songs did you choose to have playing in those moments?
Yeah, well, I wanted something to get me in the mood for going into space. So I had Queen, Don't Stop Me Now, and Queen's one of my favourite bands. U2, Beautiful Day, and Coldplay, A Sky Full of Stars. I thought that was a good choice of,
very good
of music
choices
to listen to.
That's something actually maybe kids at home can think about, is what 3 songs would they choose to play in those moments before. I had a little think on the drive up here this morning, and I had to say that I had picked Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd, which is awesome, but I realized while driving that it's a song that makes me tap on the steering wheel and bang all the things, so I'm not sure if the guitar solo would be very appropriate to be banging all the buttons in the capsule, so I might have to scrap that one. But but something that people can think of is what 3 songs would they play?
That's a good idea, it really is. What would you like to listen to just as you're about to launch off into space? Definitely.
So you've launched up, and living in space is a lot different than living on Earth. Everything from sleeping, eating, just getting from A to B. Talk to us what it's like to live in space.
Yeah, so the first thing is your body has to get used to weightlessness, and so you kind of adopt this strange body position where your shoulders float up because there's no gravity holding it down. So your whole body position changes. And then you realize that you don't need to use your legs that much. It's all about your arms pushing away from walls, getting your balance right, being able to float around a space station without knocking things everywhere. And then your brain has to be able to work in different directions and orientations. So here on Earth, up is always up, down's always down. And when we go into a room, nothing is floating. Everything is nicely held in place by gravity. On the space station, you can have an astronaut working in the roof, one on the left wall, one on the right wall, one down in the floor, and everything has to be Velcroed in place or strapped down, or else it floats off and it's a nightmare and you lose everything. So you really have to adapt to this new way of working where you're very accurate in what you do, place everything down carefully with Velcro so it doesn't float away, and just get used to controlling your body a little bit like in a swimming pool, really. You're having to control your body in a different way. In space, you're having to control your body in weightlessness. But it's a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun, and hopefully any of our viewers might get a chance as well in the future to travel to space, either as an astronaut or a space tourist. Now, Tim, we had a load of questions sent in, and many centered around what life was like living on the ISS, but we really couldn't get away from one certain theme, which we'll have to address now. And we have a question from Ellen Skillen, Integrated Primary School, of how do you go to the toilet on the International Space Station?
Okay, so, well, if you imagine what are the problems, the problem is things are going to float. So you want to keep everything under control. You don't want anything floating away that shouldn't be floating away. Nope. And the only way really to do that in space is to have a strong flow of air that keeps everything directed in the right direction. So when we go for a pee, we have a tube, and this tube's got a switch on it, and it turns on a fan that sucks air in, a bit like a hose of a vacuum cleaner, really. And we pee into that, and the airflow just keeps everything going in the right direction. So you stop peeing, you still leave it 30 seconds to make sure all the pee's gone into the container, and then you switch the fan off. And actually, the really clever part is all of that urine gets recycled back into drinking water in about 24 to 48 hours. So we recycle everything on the space station. You know, all the moisture we breathe out, all the sweat when we're exercising, all goes back into our drinking water, which is really, really efficient. And if you need to do any bigger business, it's still airflow, the same sort of thing. You have like a small potty that you do your business into, but it's airflow going down there that keeps everything going in the right direction.
Absolutely fascinating. Now, reading about your other adventures as well, you probably would think that going to the toilet on the ISS would be the most difficult of all situations you've been put in. But it was really funny to read about the toilet situation on the Aquarius on the Nemo mission. That sounded a bit odd as well. Can you tell us, while we're on the topic, tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so this Nemo mission, in fact, this is the photo behind me. This was when I was on Nemo. We were 30 meters down on the ocean floor. And we were living there for 12 days in an underwater habitat, and we were simulating a mission to an asteroid. Now, this is potentially a future mission that astronauts might do as we venture out beyond the moon and we start going deeper into the solar system. So it was a really exciting mission. But one of the things about living in this Aquarius habitat is that you can't use the loo inside the habitat. Otherwise, the smell would be unbearable for 12 days with everybody using it. So we do our business out in the ocean. We have kind of next door to Aquarius, there's like an upturned egg cup, and it's got an air pocket. So we can do a duck dive up into this air pocket, and then we can kind of do our business. But it turns out that all the fish around the reef where we are have got used to the fact that aquanauts are doing this, and what is our waste product is actually really good food for lots and lots of fish. So you have to do battle with whole shoals of fish coming towards you when you go out to do your business.
Tim, it really sounds like someone could come up with a better method for a toilet down there. Of all the amazing science you're doing, it doesn't seem like enough thought has gone into that part of it.
Well, I guess it does work, but you know, they've tried different things. We actually had this thing called the bubbler, which they hoped was going to deter the fish. It was a pipe with hundreds of holes in it linked up to the oxygen tube. So you went there and you could turn on the oxygen and all these bubbles came out. And for the first 24 hours, it worked brilliantly. It scared all the fish away. They were terrified. And so we were able to do our business in peace and quiet. But after about 24 hours, they became wise to the bubbler. And rather than scaring them away, that noise started attracting even more fish in. So we stopped using the bubbler.
Absolutely brilliant. So obviously sleeping's different on the ISS, eating's a lot different, and so is exercising. And we have a question from St. Mary's at Portaferry that they do daily exercise and the daily mile to keep themselves fit and active. But what type of fitness activity is your favorite? And did you practice mindfulness in space?
Yeah, fitness is so important to everybody everywhere. I was saying about this lockdown and the structure and routine, and what's really easy when you're in a strange environment, especially in lockdown, is to get out of sync. For things to start, losing structure, to not get enough sleep, you start eating at the wrong time, your exercise goes downhill, and your productivity goes downhill as well. So a structure and a routine really helps keep everything on track. It makes sure that you do your exercise, you eat at the right time, you get plenty of sleep and rest, and you do the jobs you need to do. So exercise for us on the space station was part of that whole well-being in keeping us in good physical shape, but also keeping us in good mental shape as well. Exercise releases endorphins, and it really helps the human body to keep both physical and mental health. So my favorite activity was running on the treadmill. I used to love and still do love long distance running, cross-country running. So for me, I would just put on some headphones, or I would just watch a movie or something on a laptop whilst I'd go onto the treadmill and run. And that for me was the best exercise.
Cool. And you actually ran the London Marathon in space.
I did, yeah. I figured if I'm doing all this exercise and running, and I was in space over the same time that the London Marathon was happening, I thought, what a great thing to get involved in. And I loved it, actually, because the morning of the marathon, mission control in Houston sent up the BBC channel. So I was able to run on the treadmill whilst watching everybody running the real London Marathon on my laptop. So it was brilliant.
Very, very cool. Now, something that you came up with in your book that was very prominent as well was your way of getting in the zone as well. And as much as exercise is so important for our mental health and well-being as well, you had an excellent way of figuring out, and you especially learned it at Sandhurst, was you get to choose your mood. And I think that's something that's so useful for every one of us who might be at home as well, that really try to become in charge and in control of your own mood. And that's something you had practiced and learned as well in your early training.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there's many different techniques you can do, and I think this really helped when I was a test pilot as well, because as we spoke about then, you know, as a test pilot, what you're doing is trying to control the situation. Actually, you know, you're going in to do something dangerous. You know, you're taking risks, but you're looking at those risks and really controlling what it is that's bothering you, and you know, how you can make it a much safer operation. And that's the same kind of thing that you can apply to all areas of your life. You know, if you're feeling stressed or if you've got worries or concerns, then really try and analyze what it is that's bothering you, and can you do something about it? If you can, then, you know, do something, change something to get the outcome that you want. And if you can't, then, you know, compartmentalize and try not to worry about the things that we can't control. And it's all about embracing, you know, a new normal, if you like. And when we would go into a cave, or if we would go underwater, the first thing we would do would just be to sit in silence and darkness for a couple of minutes, just to kind of make that transition into this unusual environment, and just to help your brain adapt to these new circumstances. And then you feel so much calmer, so much more able to deal with this new environment. You kind of embrace this new environment and think, that's it for the next 12 days, 7 days, 6 months, 1 year, however long, this is my new environment, get used to it.
An amazing tool for anyone in any aspect of life and any age to use as well, to be able to adapt and to then progress as efficiently as possible in their new task. We have another question from Comer Primary School, that what are some of the hardest things to do in space that we find easy to do at home?
The hardest thing is keeping track of everything, as I mentioned. So many times, you know, if you're busy working on an experiment and, you know, you just leave something floating there, just turn away and you come back and, oh, goodness me, it's gone. And it's strange, but it's really hard to see things that are floating. Our eyes on Earth, you know, our eyes aren't used to looking things that are that are floating in midair. You know, our eyes are used to looking things on the ground, or we look at flat surfaces. So when you lose things on a space station, it's really hard to find them again. So the biggest top tip of anyone going into space is really pay attention to, you know, being meticulous about where all your equipment is and keeping on top of it. I think that's the biggest tip.
Very good advice. And eating is a lot different as well on the ISS, isn't it? You can't just eat the normal foods that we have back here on Earth.
No, you can't. I mean, the food in space is not brilliant. Nobody goes to space for the cuisine. But we do, having said that, you know, it's not dreadful, and we've got a few different ways of getting some food up there. In fact, I've got some tins here. So
cool.
I mean, let me just show you this. There's my bacon sarnie there. That's,
lovely.
In a tin, and here's some salmon.
Nice.
And so we would get cans of food, and you can put these in a food warmer, electric food warmer, just heat it up for 15 minutes, and that's a nice hot meal. And also lots of food will also come in sort of metal foil pouches, a bit like camping food, where, again, you can just put that in an electric food warmer and heat it up, undo the foil pouch, and then with a spoon you can just eat it. Now, you have to be careful not to have too much liquid content in these, because obviously when you undo the foil, any liquid's going to come out. But actually, even thick soups are okay, because the kind of the surface tension and viscosity of the soup will make it stick in the foil. So as long as you're careful, you can still even eat thick soups out of these kind of things. And for drinks, we would take a drink pouch like this, and you would hook this up to the hot water or cold water dispenser, just clip it in, and then fill it up with water, and then you can put in your drinking straw into your pouch, and then you can drink away. And the clever thing is that this drinking straw has a clip there, and that clip obviously stops any liquid coming out of the top when it's firmly closed. So that's the important thing, is to make sure you close it up. And as I said, everything that flies to space is going to have a small piece of Velcro on it, so you can just stick your drink to the side of the wall and it won't float away.
Very, very good. What's your favorite thing to eat in space? What was your favorite food?
Favorite food, I like the puddings. I like, desserts. There were things, like sticky toffee puddings up there, and there were rhubarb crumbles. And once a week, we had enough for some pancakes. There was, pancakes on a Sunday morning. So that was another real treat.
We have an awesome question here from McKinney Primary School in Dundrod from Ben C. How often do you change your pants in space, and how do you wash them?
Okay, yeah, no, it's an important question. We don't actually wash our clothes at all. There's no way of doing laundry. So we wear clothes for as long as possible, really, and then they get thrown away. The things that we change twice a week would be our exercise kit. That's what gets the smelliest and the dirtiest. Obviously, we're sweating in that. So we get 2 changes of exercise kit a week. But a pair of trousers will last you 3 months. A t-shirt will last you easily a week, probably 2 weeks. And we just don't get so dirty in space. It's a very sterile, clean environment. And unless you're exercising, you're not sweating, and you've not got skin particles being rubbed off by shirts and clothing, because the clothing doesn't stick to you. The clothing's floating as well. So actually our clothes stay fresher for a lot longer. But no, when we're finished with them, we put them into a cargo vehicle that will then undock and burn up in the atmosphere. So eventually it all just burns up.
Brilliant. And on your Principia mission, you spent 6 months on the ISS. And the guys at St. Joseph's Primary School in Belfast want to know, what did you do in the ISS to relax and have some fun?
So there's not a huge amount of time to relax on the space station, because we're working really, really hard. And that's a good thing, actually. It keeps us busy and it keeps us occupied. And the work is enormous amount of fun as well. But when you do get time off, most astronauts would want to go to the cupola window, take photographs. I mean, you're on a space station orbiting Earth. It's the most incredible view you're ever going to see. Not just of Earth, but you could look the other direction. Of course, you look out into the universe. So if you need any inspiration or any chance to relax and unwind, then just go to the window and look out. But we also have some musical instruments up there. There's a guitar, there's a keyboard. You can go to your crew quarter and make some phone calls if you want to call friends and family. There are electronic books. There's even an electronic database of TV and movies if you want to do that as well. So there's plenty of ways that you can kind of relax, unwind, and switch off.
Okay, and Tim, I've read that you're a big practical joker. Many practical jokes throughout your time in the army, and be it running around getting chased in a gorilla suit on the ISS. Talk to us about that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of banter that goes on, a lot of camaraderie within the astronaut corps, as there was in the military as well. And I was on the space station, and somehow Scott Kelly had got his brother to fly an entire gorilla suit into space. And his brother, Mark Kelly, was also previously a NASA astronaut, and is now a senator, in fact. But, so Mark Kelly had managed to get this gorilla suit up to the space station, and Scott told me that it was on board. I thought maybe he just meant a mask, but he said, no, I've got the entire suit. And he'd wanted to surprise Tim Copra, our other NASA colleague. So he got dressed up in this gorilla suit and hid in Tim Copra's crew quarter. And I went and got Tim and said, hey, Tim, you need to go and make a phone call down to Mission Control. They'd like to speak to you about something. Of course, Tim went to his crew quarter and outburst the gorilla, which is not
what you expect.
The thing that you expect in space.
Definitely not.
What was even funnier, though, is that Scott floated around for about 5 minutes in that gorilla suit, and nobody down at Mission Control spotted it at all.
Keeping a close eye on you, you can tell then. That's hilarious. Tim, you also got the pleasure of doing an EVA. You got to do a spacewalk as well. Sounds like a phenomenal experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
It is. I mean, spacewalking is probably the highlight of any astronaut's career. And you know, if going into space is this incredible experience, going out of the hatch into the vacuum of space is another order of magnitude. Wow. And it's an incredible experience to be floating in this mini space station and just having the freedom to move around and to look around you at the universe, to look back at planet Earth. And of course, at the same time, you're out there doing an amazing job. It's another level of risk that we put ourselves into. It's a very, very risky environment on a spacewalk. There's just two of you. You completely rely on each other. And you've got, you know, the dangers of temperature extremes. You've got the vacuum of space. You've got micrometeorites flying around. You don't want to be hit by one of them. You don't want to tear or rip your suit. So you have to be very, very careful when you're spacewalking, but it's the most incredible view and the most incredible experience.
Really changes your perspective, I'd say, looking down at Earth from that viewpoint.
Yeah, any astronaut who's been in space has a perspective change. And I think that astronauts who've done spacewalks, you know, even more so. And it enables you to kind of reflect on, it puts everything into position. Okay, there's Earth, you know, there's the sun, there's Venus, there's Mars, you know, and it puts things into perspective, but also it enables you to kind of reflect on where we've come, where, you know, what humanity has been able to achieve. The fact that, you know, we've evolved as a life form on Earth, but we are actually just the universe itself. You know, we all started out as hydrogen and helium, and just over 13.7 billion years, the universe has managed to create us. And we are conscious and we're thinking and we're intelligent. And that's incredible to think that the universe has created something that can actually think about its own origins. And when you're out there floating in space, it's even more bizarre when that intelligent, you know, human being is looking back on the cradle of life.
Now, Tim, you're extremely passionate about inspiring the next generation of scientists and engineers, and you did a lot of outreach up on the ISS. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, it was really important during our mission to try and engage with young people. You know, we really wanted to use space as a way of making science exciting, technology and engineering as well. And there's a number of reasons for that. First, because I am actually passionate about those subjects, of course. I really do find them exciting and interesting. But also, there are so many great careers to be had with people who've got the right qualifications. And everywhere you look today, you're surrounded by technology and engineering and innovation. And actually, it doesn't really matter what career you're going to go into, whether it's music or drama or art or literature, or whether it's science and engineering. Technology is going to play a huge part in your life. And so I think if you have a solid background in STEM subjects, then that's really important. So the whole point of the outreach was just to try and, you know, highlight a few things that are going on in space, some of the scientific principles, and just to get people interested and excited and asking questions, you know, about technology, about innovation, about space, about science. So I think that kind of curiosity is really important for young people to have.
Absolutely. And you did a lot of science experiments. I read over 250 experiments on the ISS as well. What kind of things were you doing?
Yeah, the space station is constantly evolving what it does in science. I mean, it's a rolling science program. And so as astronauts, we join the space station, we run all the experiments, whatever those experiments might be, and then we leave. But when I was up there, we were doing lots of interesting things with material science. We were actually making metal alloys that you can't make back here on Earth, trying to develop new, lightweight, really strong metals that we could use in future cars, future aircraft engines to make them more efficient and cleaner and greener. We're looking at new medicines that we can create, new drugs for things like Huntington's disease, Parkinson's, motor neurone disease. We were looking at vaccine research. We were looking at how to help our elderly population with muscles and bones, osteoporosis. So there's a whole rolling program of science that's always going on board the space station. Makes it a fascinating place to live and work.
Really, really does. So you've spent 6 months up there. You're on your journey back. Talk to us about that journey back to Earth.
Yeah, the journey back to Earth, an exciting one, because actually, as fun as the launch is, and I mentioned about the power and the acceleration and the speed that you get up to on launch is unbelievable. Actually, it's quite a smooth journey. But the re-entry is like the roller coaster.
Oh, nice.
So if you do like your thrills, if you do like roller coasters, then re-entry is for you, because the spacecraft has to blow itself into three parts first. It has to separate, and only the descent module comes back. And the moment it separates, it starts tumbling. So you're tumbling in space, just waiting to hit the top of the atmosphere. And then the spacecraft goes into the top of the atmosphere, and then it rights itself, heat shield first. And then it starts decelerating as it comes into the thick air. That air starts to slow the capsule down. So it's like putting the foot on the brake, and you start to feel that deceleration as a G-force pushing on your chest. So it becomes hard to breathe. You have to lock your chest in place, really concentrate on breathing through your stomach. Gets very, very hot. It's 1700 Celsius outside, and there's no air conditioning inside. So, we're helmets closed with gloves on in our spacesuits. We're drenched in sweat with this G-force. And then after about 8 minutes of this deceleration, the parachutes open, but you're still going just over the speed of sound. Even after all of that deceleration, you've gone from 25 times the speed of sound to about 1 times the speed of sound. So when the parachutes open, that's the wild roller coaster ride. I mean, you are just flung around all over the place. The capsule is spinning wildly from side to side. And that's why we have the Soyuz seats are specially molded to our body position. It's not for launch, it's for re-entry and for landing, to make sure that we are as safe as we can be inside those seats. Or we make sure our harnesses, we pull our harnesses in really tight to strap ourselves in.
Oh, sounds like an incredible journey. Now, Joe from Coleraine College wants to know, if you could take someone up to space with you, who would it be and what would you want to show them?
It's so hard to narrow it down to one person. I think, everybody, should have the opportunity to experience space and to experience what our planet looks like from Earth. I did have the luxury of being able to make a couple of special calls from the space station to speak to people. And the first person I spoke to was Professor Stephen Hawking, who was a real hero of mine. I was talking with his daughter Lucy as well as himself, and we had a wonderful orbit of planet Earth where I just took the laptop to the cupola window and I just put the camera outside, so all the time that I was talking they could just see this incredible view of Earth. But I just thought that was a very special thing to be able to share with Stephen Hawking.
Wow, it sounds absolutely amazing. And we have another question from Dalriada, and Evie Hannah, who's in year 9, says that now that you've been in space, what are your next ambitions in life?
My ambitions in life is always enjoy the moment and always have fun. And I think that's really important at whatever stage in life you are. And at the moment, I'm hoping to get a second mission to the space station, or who knows, maybe even on NASA's Artemis program. The European Space Agency is very much involved in that. And that's the program to return humans to the moon. And so that's really exciting. So there's always the potential of a second mission. And beyond that, I'm enjoying more time at the moment with my family, which is really important to me as well. And as well, having the freedom to do outreach activities and to get involved in other projects that I want to do. So I'm at a great stage in my life at the moment where there's lots of different opportunities ahead of me, and I'm enjoying the journey, and I'm leaving myself open to whichever ones come along in whatever order they might come along.
And no doubt it will be another incredible adventure. Another question from Denvish College. Lila says, if you weren't an astronaut, what other job would you like to do?
Well, when I applied, I was a test pilot. I just left the Army, and I just started working as a senior test pilot for Westlands Helicopters down in Yeovil in Somerset. And so if I hadn't been successful as an astronaut, that's the job I would be doing. And, it was also a dream job of mine. So I was so fortunate to literally go from one dream job to another dream job. And so, yeah, I'd like to think that that's what I would still be doing, is working my way up, who knows, towards probably chief test pilot at some point in my career.
And something that's really obvious, Tim, is that you always follow your passions, and you followed your curiosity from a very young age, trying lots of different things, so many different things, by the way, of skydiving, potholing, kayaking, and hiking, trying to find out which one you like the most. And your curiosity then developed into a passion. And it's a great route for anybody curious and passionate who want to really find their dreams, to pursue and always push their boundaries and their limits as well. Something that's very clear in your book, Limitless, is how much you try to push the boundaries of your understanding of the world around you and the understanding of yourself as well.
It is, and I think that is a vital message to try and get across to young people. And I've mentioned a few times about these soft skills and about outdoor activities or other activities, extracurricular activities. And I think it's so important to have that breadth and to have that experience when you're younger. It helps to really build resilience as well. Our ability to adapt and to cope with changing circumstances. And we will not, gain resilience if you don't put yourself out of your comfort zone. If you stick in your comfort zone, then you're limiting yourself. So I've always been somebody who's liked to push myself a little bit further. And if you don't succeed, it really doesn't matter, because the point is you've already succeeded just from trying, just from pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. That was the success. Whether or not you've achieved the goal is less important. The fact that you were willing to try and you had that self-belief and the confidence to put yourself forward for something, I think they're really important values to try and instill on young people today.
Really lovely. And now space is for everyone, Tim, isn't it? There's room for everyone, whether they become an astronaut or they work in comms. Space needs all types of different people with different skills and talents and abilities.
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, we're doing so much at the moment in space in terms of, not just satellites that are looking at our planet Earth observation, learning more about climate change, how we can address problems back here on Earth. We're also looking further afield. Next week, we've got 3 spacecraft that are going to arrive on Mars, having left planet Earth last summer. How exciting is that? And one of them is going to be going straight down to the surface and starting to search for signs of microbial life on another planet. And think about the number of engineers and technicians that it's taken to build something like that. And so, there are so many careers in the space sector. There really are. And astronauts are just a tiny, tiny percentage of that.
And we know that there's thousands of kids watching who either dream to become astronauts or just inspired to follow their dreams and are going through quite a different and challenging year. What message would you have for any young person at home who either wants to become an astronaut or just wants to follow their dreams?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it has been a challenging year. It really has. And I think that when you're younger as well, these things are magnified. 1 year to a 14-year-old is a lot longer in terms of a percentage of your life than it is for somebody like myself. But I think the important thing is when I look back at my career, I left school at 18. I didn't have great academic qualifications. I had a C, D, and an E in maths, physics, and chemistry at A level. And I joined the army and I flew helicopters. Now, I've never stopped working hard since. And I did eventually have to get a flight dynamics degree and get my maths up to degree level standard as well. So I probably would have done, myself a favor if I'd have done better at school. But what I think that message shows is that, things might come along that throw hurdles at you, and your path might not seem to be going quite so smoothly at certain times. But you can always get things on track later in life, and you can always leave yourself open to opportunities that spring up. And I think that's the message at the moment is to, not to worry about these things that are outside of your control. Try and do as much as you can to focus on what you're passionate about, to focus your energies in the direction that you want to go, have self-belief, have confidence, but really do enjoy the journey, because if you're doing something you enjoy, then you have achieved the best that you can in life.
A fantastic message to end on, Tim. And your book for me was so inspiring and full of amazing stories about all your aspects of your journey. And I really can't wait to join you hopefully on your live book tour, which you hope to do this coming October as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, really looking forward to that. Yes, so I'm looking forward to getting back to Northern Ireland as well. Just desperately hoping that we can all start traveling and meeting each other, you know, again, fairly soon this year.
Tim, thank you so much for sharing your stories and adventures and continuing to inspire everyone, including our next generation of scientists and engineers. And we look forward to following your adventures and seeing what you do next, which will, as usual, be most incredible.
Thanks very much, Mark. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks so much, Tim. And thank you to all of you at home for joining us. And thanks to the many thousands of questions that we've been sent in. I hope we were able to get through most of them. And a big thank you again to Tim. And I hope you take his message to follow your dreams and to continue to be curious. And thank you all again for joining me, Mark the Science Guy, here at the Northern Ireland Science Festival.